So for expeditioning, we're looking at a craft that's not only longer in length, but also has a very long waterline length. And we can see by the Greenlander here, this will extend from here right the way up to the bow. It's got very little rocker, very straight, which will allow the boat to run straight, especially down to sea or in a wind. Whereas on the Romany, we can see that the rocker progresses from way in the middle of the boat, and there's quite a high amount of upturn at the ends. This will in turn slow the boat down slightly, but will make the boat easier to turn. So we have a trade-off here between the physical length and in particular the waterline length, which is going to affect our speed, and then the rocker of the boat, which will reduce that speed but will help with the turning of the craft. The other factor of the craft is the physical width of the boat and also the hull shape, and we'll look at the hull shape in a minute. The Greenlander is 21 inches wide, whereas the Romany is 21.5 inches wide. And that will have a huge effect on the volumes in the end of the boat, and on an expedition that would affect your storage capacity and how much you can actually put in the craft. Both are composite, and the advantage of a composite boat over a plastic or polyethylene boat will be that the hull will be very rigid, which will therefore help keep that speed up that we were talking about before with regards to the waterline length. The trade-off being is that they're a little bit more fragile, so on car roof racks or rock hopping, then there's greater chance of a puncture within the hull itself, whereas a polyethylene kayak would actually be a lot tougher in that environment. So there's a trade-off to the sort of style of paddling that you might actually be doing. On an expedition, the trade-off for that is that a fiberglass kayak will be easier to repair. You could carry a GRP repair kit, and that would be something you could do once you dried the craft out, patch the boat up and carry on the next day. Whereas if you took a serious hole or a split in a plastic kayak, they're notoriously more difficult to fix. So it's trading one off against the other.
On a big trip, you've got to decide really whether you're going to go for a glass boat or a plastic boat. I suppose it really depends on what type of trip you're looking at. On this trip we're looking there's this craft as a sort of form of transport to take us with the climbing gear into sort of places, so we don't really need a boat that is technically really good. We just need a load carrying sort of device really. And the advantage of having a plastic boat is in the conditions we're paddling, we're coming across quite a bit of ice. We've got fully loaded boats for 3 weeks. There's an issue of weight and landing, so a boat that can take a bit of punishment is going to be a lot better than having a glass boat. This is a triple laminated boat, so it's a pretty tough boat. There's always going to be a little bit of flex when you've fully loaded a boat, but the other issue is whether you're also going to go for a skeg type or a rudder type. We're quite lucky with this boat because they sent us one with both, so we've got a choice. But obviously the advantages of having a rudder is that you don't lose any packing space. Skeg box takes up quite a lot of room, plus you've got the cable that comes in to operate the skeg, which can be damaged if you're trying to ram stuff in. So what we're trying to look at is with a multi sort of week trip that you need every little bit of space you can. So actually having not having a skeg box is quite beneficial. And then on to the rudder system. This is a fairly simple rudder system, and I think that's really good. Rudders can break, rudders can go wrong, but this particular system is fairly simple, fairly easy to operate. The rudder is sort of deployed by pulling this string, which flips the rudder over, and then it goes into a jamming cleat. So it's very easy to drop the rudder back up when you're trying to land, because you just literally take the rope out of the jamming cleat, and the tension of the elastic flicks it back up. Yep. So it's pretty easy to deploy when you're on the water. Nigel talked about putting gear in front of the boat, and you've got to think about what sort of peg rudder system you have in terms of foot pegs. If you have a sliding peg system and you've got bags of food or other kit in front, there's a good chance that you either damage that by ripping it with the sliding peg system. So the preferred option, if you're putting gear in front of the foot pegs, is some form of pedal system where all you're doing is operating the pedals, so there's no sliding motion to damage dry bags. Yeah, and that gives you the extra space, not having to worry about damaging them.
Here we can see that the rear of the Greenlander has got an element of a fixed skeg, very much like some of the original boats designed in the 70s and 80s, but it's also had the addition of a retractable skeg, which will also help that tracking improve dramatically. The Romany here, this has got a lot of upturn, and this craft actually doesn't have a skeg. So highly manoeuvrable, but perhaps on a windy day you might need something to just help it track that little bit better as this back end starts to skid out in a following wind. So something like this would normally have a skeg to sort of make life that little bit easier.
The waterline is pretty high up the boat. This means that small edging and technical manoeuvring is quite hard in a fully loaded boat, and that's why the rudder just makes manoeuvring that much easier when you've got so much kit.
The other option you've got in terms of choosing an expedition boat would be to use a double, sometimes known as divorce boats in New Zealand. And the advantages of having a double is the load carrying capacity of the boat, the fact that if you're in a group that you've then got the ability to put somebody who's weak or seasick into the double and he's paddling on a stable platform, the benefit of being able to do rescues on possibly on a single boat within the group with a more stable platform, because the back or the front guy, depending on who's doing the rescue, could then be doing support strokes. And filming your expedition, you've got a fantastic stable platform to film the trip you're on.